just going to make an announcement. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me out there? Good. If you're wishing to speak in the public question time this morning, if you can just reach out to our staff at the door over here.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this council meeting of the 21st of February 2023, which is obviously being held in person at the Whittlesea Community Activity Centre and also being live streamed. I'm Lydia Wilson, Chair of Council, and I'd also like to introduce my Administrator colleague, Peter Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
Could I also introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Craig Lloyd, and ask that he in turn introduce the members of his executive management team.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So I'd like to introduce our Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Debbie Wood, the Interim Director of Community Wellbeing, Anthony Trail, Acting Director of Planning and Development, Debbie Blandford, Executive Manager Strategy and Insights, Frank Joyce, Executive Manager of Public Affairs, Janine Morgan, and our Interim Executive Manager of Office of Council and CEO, Sarah Rowe. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. On behalf of Council, I recognise the rich Aboriginal heritage of this country and acknowledge the Wurundjeri Willem clan and the Tongarong people as the traditional owners of lands within the city of Whittlesea. I'd also like to personally pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'm now going to read our good governance and diversity statement. At the City of Whittlesea, we are proud of our diversity and the many cultures, faiths and beliefs that make up the community. We strive to be an inclusive, welcoming city that fosters active participation, well-being and connection to each other and this land. We commit as a council to making informed decisions to benefit the people of the City of Whittlesea now and into the future, to support our community's vision as a place for all. We have a number of acknowledgements this evening, and if I could commence the acknowledgements by recognising the resignation of Chris Eddy, Administrator Chris Eddy, and that was effective from the 13th of December last year. And I'd particularly want to formally acknowledge the significant contribution that Chris made as a member of the panel of administrators and our community during the time that he was an administrator. He clearly worked alongside Peter Duncan and myself, supporting our Chief Executive Officer and the executive leadership team and staff to deliver a whole range of service, policy and governance improvements, and importantly to support our community through the COVID-19 period. He also made a particular contribution in relation to the areas of economic development and environmental initiatives, and also, importantly, in the conduct of Council's audit and risk management processes. Importantly, Administrator Duncan and I remain fully committed to our work through to October 2024. And we've set a fairly ambitious roadmap through to that period on behalf of the City of Whittlesea. And we've got a very outcome-focused program from now until October 2024. We're very much looking forward to the Victorian Government's announcement regarding a new administrator for the City of Whittlesea, and we do understand that that announcement is imminent. My second acknowledgement this evening is on behalf of Council to extend our very deepest condolences to the people of Turkey and Syria following the devastating earthquakes earlier this month, and in fact much more recently as well. Our hearts and prayers go out to all those affected, especially the families of those who have sadly lost their lives. More than 3,500 people in the City of Whittlesea identify as having Turkish, Assyrian or Kurdish heritage, so we know many of these people will have family and friends in the impacted region, and our thoughts are with them. Council was really honoured to host a touching community vigil last Friday evening at the Civic Centre in solidarity with the people of Turkey and Syria and their families and friends who called the city of Whittlesea home. And this was led by a number of local community leaders, 2 of our local members of Parliament, Minister D'Ambrosio and Rob Mitchell, alongside myself, our Chief Executive Officer and a number of our staff. I just want to foreshadow at this point in time that we will have an item of urgent business later on in the Council agenda specifically relating to this item. My next acknowledgement is in relation to former Chief Executive Officer David Turnbull. He was recognised on the 26th of January with a posthumous Medal of the Order of Australia. And this posthumous OAM is an absolutely wonderful recognition for David, a man who's has been really well recognised for his significant impact on shaping the city of Whittlesea while he was here at the helm. David led the city of Whittlesea from 2007 to 2016 as CEO, and prior to this time was the Director of Planning and Development from 1994. He was greatly respected by staff and community alike for his incredibly calm and considered approach to leadership and his genuine interest and care for all. He was also greatly respected across the whole of the local government sector and for his strategic and statutory planning work. I actually had the pleasure of working with David as a colleague over many years, and I can certainly testify to the fact that he was a real humanitarian. David is remembered for his legacy in many areas and was a pioneer in growing the role of local government advocacy. He also led council through the challenging aftermath of the 2009 bushfires. David was instrumental in creating the stunning Quarry Hills Parkland, which is a growing park along the ridgeline of the city of Whittlesea, which will ultimately see 1,000 hectares of significant land in public ownership. So this is a truly well-deserved posthumous recognition. I wanted to also just this evening acknowledge 2 very important events that have been conducted in the Whittlesea Township. And I know that there are some representatives from the organising committees here this evening. Firstly, the Whittlesea Show. I wanted to publicly congratulate the organisers of the Whittlesea Agricultural Show for delivering an absolutely wonderful event in January, after obviously the disappointment of having to reschedule the show due to flooding in November. It clearly takes an enormous effort to host an event of this scale, and to be able to regroup and reorganise in such a short period of time was absolutely incredible. The City of Whittlesea was really pleased to be the major sponsor of this event. We know how much the community look forward to it each year and the historical significance it has within our municipality. I'd like, on behalf of Council, to thank the entire show committee, and as I said, I know there are a number of them here this evening, and the many volunteers involved for their efforts, and particularly commend President Erica Hawke, who I'm pretty sure is still in the gallery this evening, and Vice President Judy Clements, for what can only be described as really inspirational leadership. And on a personal note, it was a really great honour to be in attendance on the day and to present the City of Whittlesea Perpetual Trophy. So thank you again for that wonderful effort. in relation to the Country Music Festival, and I think it's really important that we had a little bit of feedback this evening during the community forum, which we'll certainly take on board regarding the Country Music Festival. But I just wanted to note that it was also another wonderful event, and I would like to formally also acknowledge the Whittlesea Country Music Festival committee organisers, which occurred earlier this month. We are very fortunate here to be spoilt with so many local events in the township. As you'd be only too well aware, the rain held off and it proved to be a really lovely day and night at the Walker Reserve. And my congratulations go to Andrew Holding, Dave Watson and the entire festival committee and volunteers who delivered such a good showcase of live music. We'll certainly take on board some of the feedback that we've received, and I know our CEO will feed that back into the organising committee. On that note, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Peter Duncan for a couple of other short acknowledgements.
Thank you, Chair. Recently, on the 7th of February, we marked the 14th anniversary of the 2009 bushfires. I know that in this community here in Whittlesea, the memories are still very much with you and raw today, and that many of you assisted on the journey and continue to help recovery efforts to this day, emotionally and supporting the community. Each year we remember the 173 people who lost their lives in Victoria, 12 in our municipality. We remember those who were displaced and those that lost their homes and all of their property that they had. And we remember just how important the Whittlesea Township was during the recovery phase and the support point for so many people. Thank you to all of you in our community who played a role in response and recovery since that day. This year, as we do every year, we reflect, respect, and we remember. Thank you. I've just got one other announcement which I think will bring joy to the people of the township of Whittlesea. We know that the residents that live in Whittlesea and surrounding areas, that travelling to South Morang to do business with council is really inconvenient, and for so many it's a barrier to accessing important services. So I'm delighted to announce that the council will be opening a customer hub at the former Westpac site in Church Street later this year. We're in the process of just working through all of the details, but we'll have a customer service staff and other teams available to talk to residents. You'll be able to register a pet, cashless payments, or just pop in if you've got a question to do with council. We know this will make life a whole lot easier for those that live north of the municipality, so we look forward to sharing more information about that as it gets closer to the time that we're going to open the customer service hub. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and I think it's really important symbolically that that announcement is being made here at the Whittlesea Township at the council meeting this evening. I note obviously that both myself and Administrator Duncan are present this evening. Administrator Duncan, if you have a conflict of interest in relation to any item on the notice paper, you may verbally disclose the type and nature of the interest now, but you must make a declaration immediately before consideration of the matter in question. Are there any items for which you have a conflict of interest to declare?
No, Chair.
And can I also note that I have no interest to declare on any item on the council agenda this evening. I seek a motion to confirm the minutes of the following preceding meeting, the scheduled meeting of council held on the 12th of December 2022. Could I have a mover?
Happy to move that, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and I'm happy to second it. I'll now put the matter to a vote. The motion is carried. We're now going to be moving into public question time, and if I could note at the outset that we have 13 public questions this evening, and we also have a petition as well. and I'm hoping that people have indicated earlier through our governance team whether or not they wished to present their question themselves. I know I've already been given some indications. I'll just double check with everyone as we go through the individual questions. But before we do, I wanted to just read the relevant governance rules that relate to public question time and petitions. And it's particularly important to take note of these governance rules this evening, given that we have got 13 public questions. And I quote from our governance rules, "Council allows up to 30 minutes each meeting for members of the public to ask up to 2 questions or read out a petition or joint letter." Now, under the new governance rules, members of the public also have the opportunity to make a statement during this time. The person may make their statement, ask their questions or talk to their joint letter or petition for up to 3 minutes in total. So that's 3 minutes across all the questions. All statements and questions must be as brief as possible and asked respectfully. There'll be no debate or further questions. Once the question has been read, either by myself or the person who submitted the question, a response will be provided by, in this case, probably our Chief Executive Officer, but there will be no further discussion or debate in relation to the question. Where members of the public do not want to speak to the matter, the submitted question, statement, petition or joint letter will be read by myself or the CEO. In fact, I will be reading all of the public questions and in most cases the Chief Executive Officer will be responding to the public questions. The CEO and I have the ability to decline any questions that relate to matters outside the duties, functions and powers of Council, is discourteous or disrespectful, defamatory, or intends to prejudice or insult someone. Priority will be given to questions that relate to an item listed on the agenda and those received prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the Council meeting. Importantly, all questions will be responded to in writing and included in the minutes of the Council meeting. When invited to ask their question, the person must state their name, suburb and any organisation or group they represent prior to asking the question of Council. So on that note, I will start with the public questions, and these are just virtually in the order that we have received the public questions. And the first question is from Evie Wallace, who I understand will not be presenting the question directly. So I'll read Evie's question on her behalf. Some councils require small businesses to obtain business permits to trade in public places, such as a footpath trading permit or a roadside trading permit. Will street-based sex workers be required to obtain any permits following the planning scheme changes to support the decriminalisation of sex work? And if I could ask our CEO to respond to that question.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Evie, for the question. Street-based sex work is now legal activity in Victoria, a result of the Sex Work Decriminalisation Bill of 2021, passed by the Victorian Parliament on the 22nd of February 2022. The laws recognise that sex work is legitimate work and should be regulated like all other industries through standard business laws and existing agencies such as WorkSafe, the Department of Health and local government. The legislation includes provisions on times and locations for street-based sex work. Currently, the City of Whittlesea does require a permit for any street-based work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Could I now ask Vesna Konkar to come forward to the lectern? Vesna, could I please request that you read each question and then just stop so that we can have a response to the question, and then you read your second question? I think that'll be a lot clearer to the gallery. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing the council to be re-established. I've been waiting for a year to ask these questions, actually. So it's nice to be able to do that in person. First question I have tabled today is I just want to make a note. I'm a resident of Whittlesea since 1978. I moved to Epping in 2007 on the provision that there'd be major infrastructure works completed, which included the upgrading of Epping Road. It's taken 17 years, and 2012 bushfires alerted to the fact that our CFA could not get through the road, was getting bogged on the side. So now we've got barriers up, which is, I'm not sure how that's going to facilitate the CFA being able to get through in another bushfire season. But I just wanted to confirm, I've read the infrastructure for the upgrade, but I just wanted to confirm that there will definitely be 4 lanes added, well, 2 extra lanes, but 4 lanes in total, 2 lanes southbound and 2 lanes northbound, up and down Epping Road, all the way from Memorial, or from Memorial Avenue to Craigieburn Road at least. And I'm assuming it's going up to Donnybrook Road at some stage, but will there definitely be 4 lanes with appropriate right and left turning lanes into the side streets of Lindarum and Haston and the following roads proceeding up to Donnybrook Road?
Thank you very much, Vesna. And if I could get our CEO to respond to that question.
Thank you, Chair. The Epping Road upgrade is a project that's not being delivered by Council. It's being delivered by the Victorian Government through the Major Road Projects Victoria, which is an agency of the Department of Transport and Planning. Detailed projects information is on the Big Build website, bigbuild.vic.gov.au, and I can provide you a phone number afterwards as well. Council officers do regularly meet with the Department of Transport and Planning on these major projects, but it's best that you take that question up to them to make sure you get the right information.
As far as you know, Council hasn't got confirmation that there'll be 4 lanes on that road?
Sorry, Vesna. As I indicated under the governance rules, there's no further questions or discussion. We've got your full question. You will get a detailed response because I also noted that you had asked the question about the additional walking and bike track away from traffic. We'll respond in writing to your full question.
Okay, thank you.
And if you're going to stay for the full council meeting, I'd also suggest that you might talk to council officers afterwards as well.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to now ask your second question?
Question 2 is in response to the hard waste rubbish removal in Whittlesea. I don't think it's adequate, and you're forcing residents to dispose themselves of white goods, which I don't know how many people here would be able to clean and jerk a washing machine into their vehicle or an oven. There used to be Kids on the Curb, which was supplying that for well over 10 years for the City of Whittlesea. As far as I understood when I spoke to Kids Off the Curb, they got little to no support from Whittlesea Council during the COVID. I did ask Whittlesea Council to provide Whittlesea Council trucks to them because they had a broken down truck. They couldn't physically do that anymore. I just checked your website again, and it's now saying that we have to drop it off to them in Thomastown somewhere. So given that people are dumping rubbish in Whittlesea, I don't think it's appropriate that you're asking residents who are elderly, injured, recovering from surgery, or just physically unable to lift, clean and jerk their ovens and all their white goods onto their vehicles and
Sorry,
dispose of them.
that is time. Yeah, certainly. If I could ask our CEO to please respond.
Thank you. The City of Whittlesea provides all households with a range of waste disposal options, including 2 free curbside hard rubbish collections per financial year. Very few councils offer this service. The hard rubbish collection is for household items that are broken or cannot be reused. However, some items cannot currently be collected as part of this service. It is illegal for white goods or any e-waste, that is items that have a cord or battery, to be disposed of in a landfill, and as such these items cannot be collected through our hard waste collection service. Council holds regularly free e-waste drop-off events across the municipality where residents can bring their e-waste to dispose of safely, and I've attended a couple of them here in the township actually. Council can also work with residents directly who may require additional support to dispose of items that cannot be accepted or part of the rubbish collection. We encourage residents to contact us directly in these circumstances. Council is currently investigating opportunities to expand the curbside collection service to include other materials and ensure that hard waste service meets the needs of our residents. Council is also providing additional information and education to residents around the waste disposal options available to them, and we're also addressing illegal dumping through our municipality through our litter enforcement team. We encourage all residents to report any instances of illegal dumping occurring in their neighbourhoods to help us keep our neighbourhoods tidy. Council is also urging residents to take responsibility for correct disposal of goods at the end of their life cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Vesna. As I indicated, you'll be receiving, and everyone will, a written response in relation to your question. The next public question is from Glenn Eckhart, and I don't believe that he wishes to present the question himself, so I will read it on his behalf. Whittlesea Township is perfectly located to take advantage of opportunities for ecotourism that will benefit local businesses. There has been previous work completed to develop a master plan to establish a Whittlesea rail trail between the Whittlesea Township and Mernda along the old rail corridor, which could be used by multiple different path users, e.g. cyclists, pedestrians, horse riders, etc. I understand that some barriers were identified that prevented this work from progressing. My question to Council is what work is currently being undertaken to address the issues identified, and what is the timeline for resolution to enable this project to get back on track? And Craig, if I could ask you again to respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia, and thanks, Glenn, for the question. Council is committed to providing safe and accessible walking and cycling options in our municipality for the community to enjoy. We are aware of the importance of the development of a shared trail between Mernda and Whittlesea and the strong community support for this project. The development of this trail is identified in Council's Walking and Cycling Plan 22-27 and as a top priority in the draft Northern Trails 2022 strategy, which will actually be presented at the next Council meeting on the 21st of March. In the 23-24 financial year, Council is planning to undertake further investigation and update the existing feasibility study to support our advocacy to the state government for funding for the project and to progress to the detailed design phase. Officers will work with key stakeholders and interested parties in that design stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. The next questions, two questions, are from Stephen Mann. Could I ask Stephen to come up to the lectern? And again, Stephen, if you don't mind, if you could just ask your first question, we'll have the CEO respond, and then you second question.
No worries, thank you very much. And I've been a resident of Mill Park since 1987. So I've been in the city of Whittlesea, or used to be the Shire of Whittlesea, for quite some time. So thank you, Craig and Lydia, for your opportunity to share something. Now, actually, first question I was going to ask, which is actually number 2 here. Seeing that the City of Whittlesea Corporation, because it is registered with an ABN number, which was registered on the 1st of November in 1999, and then also registered to pay GST as of the 1st of July 2000, can I please get a copy of your commercial contract that the City of Whittlesea Corporation has with residents and customers, residents who are actually customers? Can we see a copy of that, and can I also read the terms and conditions of that commercial contract?
I'll hand over to Craig to respond.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Stephen, for the question. City of Whittlesea is one of 79 councils of Victoria, Councils are not a corporation, but instead a tier of government under the Constitution Act 1975 and the Local Government Act of 2020. As a local government, council has roles and responsibilities under more than 100 acts and regulations. Local laws can be developed by council to deal with important community safety, peace and order issues such as public health, management of council property, environment and amenity, and is established to respond to local issues or community need. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Stephen, if you'd like to put your first question.
Yep. Can you please furnish every Whittlesea ratepayer with the memorandum of understanding or agreement or other documents that the Chief Executive Officer, the Chair of Council or all other councillors of the Whittlesea City Corporation have with the United Nations Agenda 22 and Agenda 30?
Thanks, Stephen. And again, Craig, to respond to that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. The City of Whittlesea has no affiliation, membership or agreement with the United Nations and receives no financial support or benefits from that organisation.
And that's on record?
I've just said it.
Yeah, it's on record. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Could I now call forward Bruce Langford, who again has got 2 public questions. Could I also, Bruce, just get you to ask each question in turn, and then we'll have our CEO respond, and just to note the 3-minute time limit across the 2 questions. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, the first one is regarding the 20-minute neighbourhoods, or 15, 20, whatever they are, in different places in the world. As they're making their way across the world because of certain global agendas, and there's been a great outcry in England at the moment for those who experience the restrictions, the surveillance and the extra costs involved resulting from these neighbourhoods. Will the Council be conducting a 2-year, 3-year-long Shire-wide survey and consultation from its citizens before they consider implementing any recommendation coming from outside the Shire?
Thank you, Bruce. Craig, if you'd like.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Bruce. The 20-minute city or neighbourhood concept is simply an idea that communities are planned and well designed to make sure everything they need day to day is close to home. It seeks to create connected and walkable places where people can access basic facilities and services, buy their bread, milk at local shops, community facilities, schools, parks, within their local neighbourhood, whether you have a car or not. A 20-minute city should make life easier and more equitable. People shouldn't have to spend long periods of time or money travelling to get the services they need. As a growth area municipality, we are faced with the challenges of getting schools, community facilities, roads, public transport, open space and other services out to these newly growing areas and suburbs in a timely manner, close to where people live, in order to make their life easier for residents and local communities. We're also aware that people need to access regional services like major shopping, entertainment centres, that they work outside of the city of Whittlesea, or that they have friends and family that live in other parts of Melbourne. That is why, as well as looking to provide local services and facilities for local people, we also advocate strongly for regional infrastructure such as rail extensions, more buses, construction of new road projects such as the E6 road, the Outer Metropolitan Ring Road, widening of arterial roads like Epping Road, Plenty Road, Craigieburn Road, Donnybrook Road, Bridge Inn Road and others, to allow our residents to make those trips that they require across Melbourne more efficiently, to limit travel times and allow people to spend more time with their families and friends. Unfortunately, there appears to be a conspiracy theory circulating online about the intent of 20-minute neighbourhoods. As with many matters of public interest, Council encourage residents to seek information from reputable sources to inform their viewpoint. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Bruce, if you'd like to ask your second question.
Certainly. This one is regarding medical mandates. Since thousands of testimonies are now circulating from people I know personally, many in our own, circle of influence, people suffering serious ongoing conditions or have lost loved ones as a result of the mRNA inoculations. And since recent disclosures of corruption from pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer, who continue to profit from the sales of their noxious products, have revealed that the early studies they kept secret now show the incredible harms of their experimental drug. And since our country's excess death rate has now risen to 15% since the vax rollout, not connected with COVID, and since recent New South Wales government statistics confirm what many other heavily vaccinated countries are experiencing, that the more a person is actually jabbed, the more they seem to suffer from adverse effects. And since we now know that anybody can catch, transfer and spread COVID regardless of their vax status, here's the question. Will the Whittlesea Council, with its motto, "A place for all," stamp out discrimination and corruption where it exists, petition every employer in this shire, whether government operated or not, to stop their discrimination so that valuable, qualified and experienced healthcare workers can fill the shortages in our overrun medical system and return to provide the vital care for our citizens in all the healthcare facilities in this shire?
Thank you, everyone. Could I please get the Chief Executive Officer to respond with no interjection? Thank you. Thank you.
Vaccination mandates for healthcare workers are set by the Victorian State Government under the Health Services Act. Council abides by and supports the requirements of the Act to safeguard the health and safety of our staff and community and will not be petitioning employers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Lloyd. The next question is from Nolene Anderson, and her question is also in relation to 20-minute neighbourhood. I'll read out that question because I understand that she didn't want to specifically present it herself. I'm aware that the City of Whittlesea has signed up to be a 20-minute neighbourhood. Oxford in England are currently trialling this. They have put bollards in place and are using number plate identification cameras and planning on facial recognition equipment also. Do you plan on consulting with the community as per Clause 4B of the Local Government Act 2020? Who will be paying for this infrastructure? It's a very similar question to the one that was previously asked.
Thank you, Chair,
Craig.
and thank you, Nolene, for the question. The 20-minute city or neighbourhood concept is simply an idea that communities are planned and well designed to make sure everything they need day to day is close to home.
Could I please ask for no interjection? Could you please allow the CEO to respond to the question? And we are live streaming and people have got a right to hear the response. Thank you.
It seeks to create connected and walkable places where people can access basic facilities and services within their local neighbourhood, whether you have a car or not. A 20-minute city should make life easier and more equitable. People shouldn't have to spend long periods of time or money travelling to get to services they need. As a growth area municipality, we're faced with the challenge of getting schools, community facilities, roads, public transport, open space and other services out to these newly growing suburbs in a timely manner, close by to where these people live, in order to make their life easier for our residents and local communities and avoid long commutes. We're also aware that people need access to regional services like major shopping, entertainment centres, that they work outside of the City of Whittlesea or they have family and friends that live in other parts of Melbourne. That is why, as well as looking to provide local services and facilities for local people, we also advocate strongly for regional infrastructure such as rail extensions, more buses, construction of new road projects such as the E6 and other roads, to allow our residents to make those trips that they require across Melbourne more efficiently, and to limit travel times and allow people to spend more time with their families and friends. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. The next two questions are from Craig Stowe, and I understand that he did not want to present the questions himself. So I will read each question and again ask Craig to respond to them. Question 1. Under the Local Government Act 2020, an objective of the Act is that, quote, councils are constituted as representative bodies that are accountable, transparent, collaborative, efficient and engaged with their communities. If this is the case, why does the council have confidential business on their agenda towards the end of their meetings, and why is this business hidden from the ratepayers and residents? Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Craig, for the question. The City of Whittlesea Council actively minimises the number of confidential items. Council's public transparency policy is available on our website, as well as Council's governance rules, which outlines how Council undertakes Council decision-making at its Council meetings. We publicly report on our percentage of Council resolutions made at meetings closed to the public or confidential decisions each year. Last year, this was 4.08% of the average. For similar interface councils, it was 9.26%, with all Metro's councils advertising 6.92%. Council decisions made in public meetings have increased from 87% in 2020 to 96% in 2022. There are some reports for Council that are deemed confidential. Confidential information is defined in Section 3 of the Local Government Act 2020 and is, for example, any information or decision-making around tenders, security information, planning information that might encourage land speculation, law enforcement information that may prejudice an investigation, information that is legally privileged, personal information that it's unreasonable to disclose, and private commercial information. There is no confidential business at today's or the previous Council's meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Question 2 is, does the City of Whittlesea, as per Division 8 of the Local Government Act, have an Audit and Risk Committee? If so, who is part of this committee? How often do they meet and who do they report to? Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. The Audit and Risk Committee is an independent advisory committee of Council, and its role is to report to Council and provide appropriate advice and recommendations on matters presented to it. It acts in this capacity by monitoring, reviewing and advising on issues within its scope of responsibility and assisting Council's governance obligations to its community. The Audit and Risk Committee work in accordance with their charter, which is endorsed by Council. The charter governs the committee's functions and responsibilities, including monitoring Council's compliance, financial performance, risk management, fraud prevention systems and internal and external audit functions. The membership consists of 4 independent members and 2 councillors or administrators, and they meet 5 times per year. We note that the independent chair of the Audit and Risk Committee will be presenting an update of the work of the committee at the March Public Council meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. The next question is from Isabel Conway, and I understand that I'll be reading Isabel's question on her behalf. It's quite a lengthy question, and it's again on the issue of openness and transparency by Council. And I quote, "Councils are constituted as representative bodies that are accountable, transparent, collaborative, efficient and engaged with their community." Local Government Act 2020. If the Council is keen to build resilient and strong communities, there must be transparency, collaboration and efficient engagement with the community in all discussions, proposals and decision-making. Why are issues and agendas pertaining to connected communities, livable neighbourhoods, strong local economy, sustainable environment and high-performing organisation discussed in a closed meeting? What is being discussed that Council does not want the public to know? In addition, the situation raises a level of confusion and ethical questions, not just for Council but also for the community. On the one hand, governance calls for transparency, collaboration and efficient engagement with the community, but on the other hand, endorses confidential discussions and decision-making on issues that have great impact on the future of many residents. I'm especially keen for this issue to be answered in the February 2023 meeting, as it directly relates to matters listed in the agenda. More importantly, I'm looking forward to Council explaining how they're going to manage this conflict. Following on from this question, it greatly concerns me that these key issues and decisions that directly impact residents, ratepayers, are made in secret. How do we know that decisions are made with ethical, moral principles and that conflict of interest is transparent? To hide behind confidentiality rules legislation is in itself immoral and unethical. The community should be informed and consulted in all discussions and included in the decision-making. This is especially more pertinent given that Council is in administration and we do not have councillors to represent us. Transparency in all levels of governance encourages accountability. Transparency also encourages accurate risk and safety assessment for both the Council with their decisions and community by providing a safe, livable space. Accurate financial costing. Remember, Council is legally accountable financially. And given the current financial economic situation, any council income, whether gathered from ratepayers or other revenue, needs to be spent wisely. Accurate planning, decision-making regarding sustainable living, livable neighbourhoods, valid and appropriate research to determine impact on the environment and climate change, a strong local economy as business and consumers have a high level of trust in Council to act morally and ethically on their behalf. And again, if I could ask our Chief Executive to respond to that question.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Isabel, for your question. The City of Whittlesea Council actively minimises the number of confidential items. Council's public transparency policy is available on our website, as well as Council's governance rules, which outline how Council undertakes decision-making at Council meetings. We publicly report on our percentage of Council resolutions made at meetings closed to the public, or confidential decisions, each year. Last year, this was 4.08%, and the average for similar interface councils was 9.26%, with all metro councils averaging 6.92%. Council's decisions made in public meetings has increased from 87% to 96% in 2022. There are some reports for Council that are deemed confidential. Confidential information is defined in Section 3 of the Local Government Act 2020 and is, for example, any information or decision-making around tenders, security information, planning information that might encourage land speculation, law enforcement information that may prejudice an investigation, information that is legally privileged, personal information that is unreasonable to disclose, and private commercial information. There is no confidential business at today's and the previous Council meeting. It should be noted that the City of Whittlesea Council does not hide its decisions from the community. Councillors and administrators are required to declare and manage any conflicts of interest in accordance with the Local Government Act and Council's governance rules. As part of every Council meeting, the Chair advises all councillors or administrators that they must disclose any conflict of interest on the agenda, including the type and nature of the interest. Where there is a conflict, the administrator or councillor must leave the meeting prior to the consideration and voting on the agenda item for which they have declared a conflict. Any declared conflicts are also included in the Council's minutes for transparency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. We are nearly just at the 30-minute mark and we still have 5 questions and a petition as well. So I move an extension of time until we complete the pre-submitted questions and the public petition. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. We'll now move into the next question, which is from Matthew Lawson. And again, I understand that I'll be reading Matthew's question out on his behalf. I'm a long-term Whittlesea constituent and I'm very concerned that Council has adopted the United Nations sustainability goals as part of their website and ongoing agenda. Before moving forward with the foreign body's objectives, was consultation taken up with members of Whittlesea? Is there funding coming through Council from the United Nations in regards to these practices? And again, if I could ask Craig to respond to that question.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Matthew, for the question. The City of Whittlesea has no affiliation or membership of the United Nations and receives no financial support or benefits from this organisation. The Sustainable Environment Strategy and Climate Change Plan were shaped after consultation with the community. Council had more than 800 people contribute to the development of the City of Whittlesea's new Sustainable Environment Strategy 2022-2032, the Climate Change Plan 2022-2032 and the Sustainable Environment Action Plan 2022-2024. The plans set a clear path that will help us tackle climate change and environmental sustainability as we move towards becoming a net zero emissions city by 2036. It is most regrettable that the good work of councils and their environment plans, which have been developed in consultation with the community, are being undermined.
Thank you. I will now move on to Graham Conway's questions, which I'm going to read as one question and then get Craig to respond. I've been doing research into the electromagnetic frequencies EMF and the effects on the environment, humans and climate change. Some research states Melbourne, Australia is the new testing ground for 26,000 MHZ wave 5G technology. Peer review reports over 2,000 show biological harm from 3G and 4G wireless technology. Now we're being exposed to 5G with associated increased radiation harm. MHZ of 26,000 millimetre waves have not been tested or proven safe by the telecommunication industry, and there's a reference to a particular website. The township of Whittlesea has a total of 13 transmitters within 1 kilometre range by 4 3G, by 2 4G, by 3 4GX, by 4 5G. There are further 11 transmitters located within the local area where I live by 4 3G, by 3 4G, by 3 4GX, by 15G. Residents of the township are exposed to a total of 24 transmitters as they travel locally, attending to daily activities. As you can see, the transmitters range from 3G through to 5G. What independent risk and safety assessment has been done to test the effects and safety of radiation emitting from individual transmitters, test the effects and safety of the total output of radiation emitting from individual telecommunication towers, test the cumulative effects of overlapping radiation emanating from the 24 transmitters in our local area. In relation to my first question, please advise what the increased EMF output will be with the installation of the new surveillance equipment. The additional layer of radiation emitting from the surveillance equipment needs to be included in all risk and safety assessments. Council needs to be transparent with all and any installation that can have adverse effect on the community. We cannot achieve sustainable communities if the health of the community is at risk from untested equipment or products. A community that has been harmed by radiation poses a financial burden on limited resources. We wish to be included in collaborative consultation once the above risk and safety data is established. Should the data indicate that radiation poses harm for the environment, including residents, at what level do we take a course of action against possible injuries from this untested high-magnitude EMF? Insurance companies stated they will not insure damages from EMF. Our only course of action will be a civil class action against all levels of government, including councils and their employees who made the decision for towers and transmitters to be erected and activated. Craig.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Graham, for the question. The Australian Communications and Media Authority, or ACMA, sets the allowable exposure limits for telecommunications facilities within Australia. The allowable exposure limits for telecommunication facilities are nationwide, and any telecommunications facility must meet the mandated requirements set by the ACMA. Telecommunication facilities must meet the relevant requirements and, once operational, must have a compliance certified by an accredited person. Any additional infrastructure added to the facility at a later date, such as a second carrier, would require the documentation to support and change to ensure it meets the report and mandatory compliance requirements. Unfortunately, conspiracy theories continue to circulate on this matter, and we suggest any resident that has concerns contact the ACMA. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. The next question, if I could please ask for quietness in the gallery. Could I please ask you not to interject? Thank you. Thank you. Can I please ask you to stop interjecting? And I'm going to go to the next question from Whittlesea Langford. Again, it's about 5G activation, question 1. And I read, given that there is now a tower on the hill above my house in Whittlesea Township with 5G capable apparatus attached, I'd like to know whether the Whittlesea Council has received independent health reports without any hint of vested interest, which include long-term toxicological or carcinogenic studies declaring that the 5G technology that is currently being rolled out in our shire will have no detrimental effect on our health. Craig, if I could get you to respond to the first question.
Yeah, thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Whittlesea, for the question. The Australian Communications and Media Authority, ACMA, sets the allowable exposure limits for telecommunications facilities within Australia. The allowable exposure limits for telecommunication facilities are nationwide. An early telecommunication facility must meet the mandated requirements set by the Australian Communications...
Craig, could I just get you to stop for a minute? I'm sorry, but could I please ask that you don't interject while Craig is responding? This is not the forum for debate with Council. I'm sorry, I'm not going to allow any interjection. You will be getting your written response to the question. I'm sorry, there'll be no interjection from the gallery. Craig, could you please continue the response?
Telecommunication facilities must meet the relevant requirements and, once operational, must have a compliance certified by an accredited person. Any additional infrastructure added to the facility at a later date, such as a second carrier, would require the documentation to support and change to ensure it meets reported mandatory compliance requirements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Whittlesea's second question is regarding food sharing. I've heard of a law that was passed surreptitiously last year by the Labor government in Victoria that will effectively forbid me to share the meat that I might slaughter on my property, the eggs that my chickens might produce, and the fruit and veggies that I grow in my own garden. If this is true, I would like to know what kind of consultative process took place to implement this law in our shire and how we can reverse this decision until the democratic process can take place, which gives due process to consultation in our community. If this is not the case, you can set my mind at ease by assuring the residents in this shire that their right to buy, sell and barter freely will not be hindered in the Commonwealth by such laws that smack of the feudal system of a bygone era where the rich landowners forbid the poor from hunting and gathering in forests and sought to control and tax everything they did on their own land. Craig, if you could please respond to that question.
Thank you, Lydia. The City of Whittlesea is not aware of any such legislation from the State Government. We suggest making contact with the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action as the responsible authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. Two final questions. A question from Brian Matthews from Doreen, and he asks, what services will be provided in the new hub in Whittlesea? Thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Lydia, and thank you, Brian, for the question. We're in the process of working through all of the details, Brian, but we'll have customer service staff, representatives from our economic development areas, community development, and our planning teams available to talk to residents. You'll also be able to register pets, make cashless payments, or, as Lydia mentioned earlier on, just pop in to ask a council question. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And the final question is from Therese Sutton of Whittlesea, and her question is, can signage be added on Church Street that points to businesses on the side streets, i.e. naturopath, chiropractor, to increase awareness of those businesses? And I think, Craig, we might take that question on notice and respond in writing to that question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We will. There are specific state government legislations around those type of signage, so we'll need to seek some advice on that before we provide an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. That concludes the public question time section of the council agenda, and if we could move on to petitions and joint letters, and I note that we've got one petition which was at the 16th of February with the head petitioner Stephen Catanazzi. I understand that Stephen might be in attendance this evening, is that correct? Yes, up the back, but not wishing to talk to the petition. Is that correct, Stephen? Thank you. So what I wanted to do was note that we have received a petition which is from 21 signatories requesting council to remove all trees planted on the nature strips on Harrison Street, Mernda. But we actually got a subsequent email from one of the petitioners as well, indicating that the petition was also to include the nature strip trees in Kilpatrick Street, Mernda. Administrator Duncan, do you have any questions in relation to this petition?
No, Chair.
I have no questions either, but I'm wondering if I could move a motion in relation to this petition to be tabled. And I wonder if I could move to resolve as follows, and there will be a couple of changes from the recommendation that was in the published notice paper. So could I move to resolve that council note the petition from 21 residents requesting that council remove all nature strip trees on Harrison Street and Kilpatrick Street, Mernda. Thank you. And write to the signatories to inform them that. Could I please ask for removal of point 1? Thank you. Number 2 becomes a new part 1. As is, a meeting with the head petitioner will be organised with the Director, Infrastructure and Environment or representative on site to understand their concerns and any further rationale for their request. 3 becomes a new part 2. An independent arboricultural assessment will be prepared in relation to residents' concerns following the site meeting. And part 3, just to have a couple of minor amendments. A report to council will be prepared for the April 2023 council meeting, advising how the petitioners' concerns will be addressed. In consultation with the Director, Infrastructure and Environment, all signatories to the petition will be advised of council's decision following the April council meeting. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. As the mover of this particular motion, I just simply wanted to note that Administrator Duncan and I have actually been out on site to view the trees that have been planted on the nature strips on Harrison Street, Mernda, and also on Kilpatrick Street. And we have got a further site visit with relevant senior council officers this week just to better understand this issue. I'll now put that motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion's carried. Thank you. We will now be working through the agenda, commencing with item 5.2.1, Planning Scheme Amendment C245, Heritage Overlay on 90 and 150C, formerly 100 Bints Road, Wollert, adoption. If I could ask Debbie Blandford, Acting Director Planning and Development, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Julie Paget, our Strategic Planner, to provide a brief overview of this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. I present to you this report, which provides an update on the outcome of the exhibition on Amendment C245, which seeks to apply and amend the heritage controls at 90 and 150C, formerly 100 Bints Road, Woolert, and to recommend that the amendment be adopted. Amendment C245 seeks to apply the heritage overlay permanently to a place of local heritage significance known as Ewett's Farm at 90 Bint Road, and to correct an identification error of a heritage place to which the heritage overlay already applies, being Bint's Farm at 150C Bints Road. The amendment was placed on public exhibition between the 21st of January 2021 and 5th of March 2021. 2 submissions were received, one from the then Department of Transport and one from the landowner of 90 and 150C Bints Road. Both submissions challenged the extent of the heritage overlay. The matters raised by the Department of Transport related to a portion of a dry stone wall. Council has now reached a mutually satisfactory resolution with the submitter by applying other provisions within the Whittlesea planning scheme to provide the required protection of the wall. The negotiations with the landowner for 90 and 150C Bints Road were more complex. The site is intended for a substantial residential development, and negotiations included the consideration of the extent of the overlay and the timing of when it would be applied. It has been agreed that design guidelines will be created and that these will be applied at the development phase, essentially front-loading. This means that each individual purchaser will no longer need to apply to council for a planning permit under the heritage overlay requirements. Both submitters have now withdrawn their objections to the amendment. Following the resolution and withdrawal of the 2 submissions, it is recommended that Council adopt Amendment C245 with the reduced post-exhibition curtilage as outlined in Attachment 2, and then submit the amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Administrator Duncan, do you have any questions relating to this item?
No, Chair.
I also have no questions. So do I then have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.2.1?
I'm happy to move this item, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and I'm happy to second it. Administrator Duncan, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say we've considered this matter several times at Council now, and it's really pleasing to see that we've resolved tonight on the adoption of Amendment C245 with the reduced post-exhibition curtilage and submission of the amendment to the Minister for Planning and approval. I'd like to thank the Council officers for the positive outcome, not just from a heritage perspective, but particularly in relation to resolution and withdrawal of the 2 submissions that have been made. And it also does mean that we have significant time and cost savings that are going to be applied associated with not having to have a planning panel hearing. So that's a really great outcome. So that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I've really got nothing further to add other than to also express my appreciation. It's really good to have those matters resolved, and I know it's required a lot of hard work on the part of Council officers. So on that note, I'm going to put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you. If we now move to item 5.4.1, Green Wedge Management Plan 2023 to 2033, and again, if I could ask Debbie Blandford, the Acting Director of Planning and Development, to introduce this item. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, and again I'll be handing over to Julie Padgett to introduce the Green Wedge Management Plan report.
Thank you. I present to you this report on the new Green Wedge Management Plan, which is recommended for adoption. More than 60% of the municipality is identified as Green Wedge land, which is protected from urban development. There are rural and non-urban areas of metropolitan Melbourne located outside of the urban growth boundary. It is a state government requirement that all councils containing Green Wedge areas must prepare a Green Wedge Management Plan. Council's first plan ended in 2021. This new plan will guide the management of the Whittlesea Green Wedge over the next 10 years. Preparation of the plan has involved 2 rounds of community engagement, Stage 1 engagement was May to July of 2021, and Stage 2 engagement was May to July of 2022. Over 550 community members and stakeholders directly participated in a range of engagement activities, including meetings, drop-in sessions, face-to-face, online information sessions and surveys. There was a wide range of views and opinions expressed as part of the Stage 2 engagement, and this feedback has informed the new plan. The structure of the new plan is aligned to Council's integrated planning framework and uses the Whittlesea 2040 goals as key themes. The plan has also benefited significantly from the contributions of both of our traditional owners. The new plan reaffirms the community's priority for protecting the environment and rural landscape character. It emphasises the importance of managing soil health, for providing safe rural development, and for encouraging sustainable rural and urban interface management. In addition, the new plan envisages a stronger and more balanced role for Whittlesea's Green Wedge in supporting a strong local economy through local food production and the visitor economy. Opportunities for further regional cooperation with Hume and Nillumbik councils and regional bodies will continue to be explored in the management of the Green Wedge and in promoting agriculture and local tourism. It is therefore recommended that Council resolve to adopt the new Green Wedge Management Plan and the other recommendations as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Julie. And if I could just jump in first with an initial question. I note within the officer report that there's reference to the delay in the state government review planning for Melbourne's green wedges and agricultural land. And I just wondered whether we've received any further intelligence in relation to the timing and process of that particular review, given that is really the overarching framework to guide green wedge planning.
We haven't received anything in relation to dates for publication of that review. Officers have been in contact with the relevant department, which was DELP at that time, prior to starting the Whittlesea Green Wedge Management Plan. DELP indicated that they were happy for us to proceed with the Green Wedge Management Plan, but requested that we made sure that the traditional owners were actively included in the process, and we've ensured that's happened.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, but there is no opportunity for discussion during this item. Could I just ask Administrator Duncan, do you have any further question?
No, you've asked the question I was going to ask, so thank you, Chair.
Could I move the officer recommendation for item 5.4.1, but with a new part 4? And, it's an additional item, and that is to provide a copy of the Green Wedge Management Plan 2023 to 2033 to all library branches of the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Corporation. Do I have a seconder with that amendment?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I've spoken at Council a number of times about the importance of our Green Wedge Management Plan, and I've also spoken about the many tangible achievements against our previous 10-year plan, and we've obviously publicly reported against those achievements on a number of occasions. And clearly tonight's plan that we are endorsing really builds on the work that's occurred previously and on that previous 10-year plan. And I think it's really important that Council does take that leadership role in relation to green wedge management, particularly given that 61% of our municipality is actually green wedge. You noted in your presentation that the new plan has really been shaped by extensive community feedback, and that's been over 2 phases with more than 550 people that have actively contributed in a range of engagement activities. And I also just wanted to really note the dedicated feedback from the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation and the Tongarong Land and Waters Council, for which we're very grateful, and they weren't involved in the first phase of the consultation. So clearly what we've done is carefully considered all of the feedback and ideas, and I note that officers have actually reworked the final plan on the basis of the various comments that have come in to capture community thoughts in a really balanced way. I just want to say 3 particular highlights from my perspective, and Julie, you talked about these highlights yourself, but the first is the emphasis on the importance of regional and local government collaboration. And you've highlighted within the report a number of areas where we really need to continue the collaboration with other councils and with the Darebin Creek Management Committee, and that we need to build on that regional collaboration even further. The fact that the plan has for the first time involved the active engagement by traditional owners, and there's a focus on our evolving relationship and recognition of not just cultural heritage, but also the importance of cultural practices. And finally, that stronger and balanced role of the Whittlesea Green Wedge in supporting a strong local economy, and you commented that as well, including through local food production and the visitor economy and recognition of some of the unique aspects of the municipality. I just wanted to conclude by congratulating staff. I think the plan is well written, it's informative, it's really easy to navigate, and it's got a number of aspirations that are really about pushing the boundaries and actions to achieve even better outcomes. And then publicly, I just wanted to thank the many people who put in submissions to the development of this current plan, and there was some really healthy community engagement. So thank you to our officers and to community members as well. Administrator Duncan.
You've stolen my thunder a bit there, Chair. I'd like to thank the community as well. I think it's really important that they were involved, and I would like to also thank the traditional owners who invested their time to help us with this. I think it's a great outcome that we asked the community to help shape the 10-year Green Wedge management plan, and that they embraced that and got involved. So I think that's a great outcome. But you've said everything else that I was thinking, particularly thanking the community. That's it from me.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thank you again. Item 5.5.1, advocating for funding and better outcomes for Whittlesea. And if I could ask our Interim Executive Manager, Office of Council and CEO, Sarah Rowe, to present on this item.
Thank you, Chair. There is an opportunity for Chair of Council and Administrator Duncan to travel interstate alongside Council's Chief Executive Officer, Craig Lloyd, and members of Council's Executive Leadership Team on separate occasions to meet with federal government politicians and senior advisors, state and local government, to advocate for funding and better outcomes for the Whittlesea community. Council approval is required for any interstate travel by councillors or administrators. Therefore, the report is seeking that Council authorise Chair of Council Lydia Wilson and Administrator Peter Duncan to travel interstate to advocate for funding and better outcomes for the Whittlesea community between the period March to June 2023.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Administrator Duncan, do you have any questions in relation to this item?
No, Chair.
Do I have a mover for the officer recommendation for item 5.5.1?
I'll move it.
Thank you. And I'm happy to second the item. Would the mover like to speak to the item
Just to say that obviously we're both attending separately for advocation on our Aboriginal gathering place, our regional aquatic centre and those things from a federal government's perspective for funding, amongst other things which are outlined in our advocacy plan, which people can look at on the website.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I've got nothing further to add to that, so I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 5.5.2, Quarterly Performance Report, Quarter 2, ended 31st of the 12th, 2022. Could I ask our Chief Executive Officer to briefly introduce this item? Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to in turn introduce Aaron Gerard, who's our Acting Chief Financial Officer, who will give us an overview of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig, and good evening, everyone. The purpose of the report is to present to Council the Quarterly Corporate Performance Report for the period ended 31 December 2022, which covers the Community Plan Action Plan, good governance, capital works performance and financial performance. Starting from the Community Plan Action Plan perspective, there are 125 key actions to be delivered in the 22-23 financial year. Of the 125 key actions, 112 actions are reported on track, 8 actions reported to monitor and 5 actions reported off track, with further detail included in the reports. From a good governance perspective, in addition to conducting regular council meetings and Audit and Risk Committee meetings, Council has updated the conflict of interest policy to continue to enhance governance. From a capital works perspective, as at 31 December 2022, the year-to-date capital works expenditure of $22 million was $3 million ahead of budget. This was largely due to road and footpath works progressing ahead of schedule and unbudgeted land acquisition at 1781 Donnybrook Road, Woodstock. The outcome of a detailed review undertaken by council officers is that the full year forecast as at 31 December 2022 expects capital works expenditure to be $66.2 million, which is $9.3 million under the annual budget, with an anticipated $10 million of project value to be carried forward into the 23-24 financial year. A further review will be undertaken by council officers ahead of the Quarter 3 Corporate Performance Report. From a financial performance perspective, as at 31 December 2022, Council recorded an operating surplus of $124.2 million, which was $23.1 million unfavourable to the year-to-date budget. This is largely driven by non-monetary contributions, as the amount of non-cash assets transferred to Council from developers have not been as high as anticipated as a result of delays in reaching practical completion in new subdivisions throughout the municipality. The outcome of the Quarter 2 forecast review is also included in the report, and Council is anticipating an operating surplus of $137.6 million, which is $3.7 million unfavourable to the adopted budget. A significant factor contributing to this variance is bad and doubtful debts, which is an accounting treatment only, and council officers will continue to pursue outstanding debts. I'd like to quickly touch on council's operating surplus, highlighting to council that this is an accounting result only and is calculated to comply with the requirements of Australian accounting standards, and importantly does not constitute excess cash available for council to spend. This is due to the fact that council's surplus is largely made up of either non-cash items such as asset contributions from developers, or cash items that are restricted by legislation and how they can be used in the future by council. Lastly, I'd like to make special mention about the great work that council officers are doing to support the community regarding financial hardship and working with the community to enable them to go on payment plans, which we have seen a significant uptake in this financial year, especially for rates debtors. Also, City of Whittlesea is the first council in Australia to sign up for the Thriving Communities Partnership, which is a cross-sector collaboration with the goal that everybody has fair access to the modern essential services they need to thrive in contemporary Australia, including utilities, financial services, telecommunications and transport. I propose the recommendations as outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. I wonder if I could just start off with an initial question, and you mentioned rates debtors. The performance report indicates that 39% of rates raised have been collected compared to the same period of the 2021-22 financial year of 42%. Can you just perhaps make a comment about that, what that's suggesting?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So even though we're saying that it's 3% lower than the same time last year, it's actually 4.6 million greater than that same time last year. But with the annual rates notice being received and due in February, we'll get a better indication of where we sit in the Q3 corporate performance report.
Okay, thank you. And you talked about the relationship between rates debtors and also our financial hardship officer. How long have we had the hardship officer in place now? 2 years?
That's correct.
And are we really seeing that there is a good take-up of the services of the hardship officer as opposed to previous practice of going straight to debt recovery?
Yes, Chair. So in this last financial year, there's been a significant uptake in payment plans especially.
Okay, thank you. Administrator Duncan, do you have any questions in relation to this item?
No.
I'm happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.5.2. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I just probably wanted to make a couple of comments. This is obviously Q2 of the corporate performance report, and I think it is really a very invaluable and comprehensive document because it combines a number of things that we previously used to report on individually. So it combines a report on how we're tracking financially against our community plan commitments and also against our capital expenditure commitments, so we can see all of it together. And I actually just wanted to make reference to the comments that were made at the last Audit and Risk Committee, and in fact there was a question here this evening about whether we have got an Audit and Risk Committee that we responded to, but the committee specifically had noted that it's an excellent report because it does integrate all of those components and it's very informative, not just to Audit and Risk, but also publicly as well. So again, I just wanted to commend Director Renner, who's actually an apology this evening, Sarah Renner, yourself, Aaron, Rob Kistian, who I know is in attendance as well this evening, and the rest of the team. It's a lot of exhaustive work to pull such a comprehensive report together, and just want to acknowledge the efforts of council officers. Thank you. Administrator Duncan?
Hear, hear, Chair.
I'll put the item to a vote.
You're
All
cutting
those
my
in
grass
favour?
tonight.
Thank you. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thank you.
If we move to item 5.5.3, appointment of independent member of CEO Employment Matters Committee, and if I could ask our Executive Manager of Strategy and Insights, Frank Joyce, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This report recommends the appointment of an independent chair of the Chief Executive Officer Employment Matters Committee, which is known as CMAC. The CMAC is an independent advisory committee of Council, and its role is to report to Council and provide appropriate advice and recommendations on all contractual matters relating to the position of the CEO. An independent chair of the CMAC is required under the CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy 2021. Margaret Devlin had previously been appointed as CMAC independent member since mid-2020, and her term expired on the 31st December 2022. During the time, Margaret provided valuable advice and support to CMAC, including regarding the recruitment and appointment of our current CEO, Craig Lloyd, the establishment of key performance indicators, 6 monthly and annual performance reviews, and remuneration advice. An extensive recruitment process was undertaken in November 2022 for the role of independent chair to join the CMAC. This involved shortlisting of 15 applications, interviewing and reference checking undertaken by the selection panel. The report recommends for Christine Milam to be appointed as independent chair of CMAC for a 4-year term, commencing the 1st of March 2023. Christine has extensive experience in human resource management, executive recruitment, performance management, policy advice, human resource legislation, facilitation and chairing, as well as strong public sector and local government knowledge. Christine is currently appointed as an independent member or chair of a number of similar committees for other councils. The recommendation also confirmed the proposed rates for the CMAC chair, the process to formalise the appointment, and also for a letter to be provided to formally thank Margaret Devlin for her significant contribution over the past 2.5 years. I put forward the recommendations as outlined in the report.
Thank you, Frank. Administrator Duncan, do you have any questions in relation to this item? I have no questions either. So I'm very happy to move the officer recommendation for item 5.5.3. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. Just very briefly, I think Frank has really outlined the intent of this report and the recommendations well. I think it's invaluable and best practice having an independent chair of the CEO Employment Matters Advisory Committee, particularly a chair with relevant specialist skills, and their role is obviously to support and guide us through consideration of all contractual matters relating to the CEO position. As you indicated, Frank, we're very fortunate to have somebody of the calibre of Margaret Devlin for the period that we did, and now that we'll be engaging Christine Milam, and you noted her particular expertise, and we'll be welcoming her for a 4-year term commencing at the end of February of this year. So I'm really delighted with the outcome and the performance of the committee. Administrator Duncan?
No, Chair, this is really an administrative matter, but I've got nothing more to add to that.
I'll now put the item to a vote. All those in favour, the motion is carried. Thank you. There are no notices of motion, but in relation to urgent business, I did foreshadow earlier that I was going to move a item of urgent business, and I would like to move the following motion. That Council notes with deep concern and sorrow the devastating earthquakes that have struck Turkey and Syria, expresses its firm solidarity with members of the Whittlesea community who are of Turkish and Syrian background, and offers sincere condolences at this difficult time. And 3, approves a $15,000 contribution to the Emergency Action Alliance that are offering support to Turkey and Syria through a coalition of humanitarian charities. Do I have a seconder for that motion?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan. I will then put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. If we move to reports of council representatives and CEO update, Administrator Duncan, could I invite you to provide an update to council and members of the public in relation to activities over the past month?
Absolutely. Obviously, Council has just released its Community Awards program, and I sit on that awards committee with a representative of previous award winners from the city. So we had our first meeting on the 31st of February, and we are due to meet 28th, I think, of February to decide our award winners for this year, which is really good. I sat in on the Audit and Risk Committee meeting because Administrator Eddie, that was his role before, but I'm sitting in until we get a new administrator. So that was on the 16th of February. And the City of Whittlesea, I'm not sure how many years it's been happening, but attended the Pride March in St Kilda, which was fantastic to see. I believe there was something like 30,000 spectators this year, so it was very good for the city to support their workforce and also the support of inclusion and diversity across the municipality. I attended with Lydia Wilson the Trust for Nature Protecting the Grass Eucalypt Woodlands meeting and seminar about what's happening around that, which was really quite interesting. And then we had the pleasure of opening the Whittlesea Public Gardens, which we were delighted to have the Minister for Local Government, Melissa Horne, and Bronwyn Halfpenny MP attend. And just a thank you to the Victorian Government for their contribution from the Growing Suburbs Fund of $2 million to help us rejuvenate that space in phase 1. That's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Administrator Duncan, and I have no questions of you in relation to your report. Thank you.
You were with me.
I'll try not to repeat these same items because obviously we've attended a number of things together. I'll maybe just focus on a few additional items such as my attendance. I'm a member of the Yarra Plenty Regional Library Corporation and I attended a meeting of that particular body. The Interface Councils group meeting, so that's the councils that comprise the Interface group, along with our Chief Executive Officer. There was a meeting of the City of Whittlesea Business Advisory Panel and also, as Administrator Duncan indicated, a meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. We had a number of citizenship ceremonies over the preceding period. So we had, just prior to Christmas, we had 2 sessions with 130 new citizens at each of those citizenship ceremonies and a further citizenship ceremony in January with a further 130 new citizens at each of those sessions. I had the absolute pleasure of attending the Whittlesea show that I did mention earlier and also the Whittlesea Country Music Festival. It's probably just important to note in relation to Administrator Duncan's comment about the Trust for Nature meeting, the protection of the grassy eucalypt woodlands is something that we've been strongly advocating for, and it was really important that both of us were in attendance because we're really wanting to progress that particular advocacy item. It was exciting to be at the opening of phase 1 of the Whittlesea Public Gardens, and that was a state government partial funding from the Growing Suburbs Fund. And then last Friday night I had the absolute pleasure, but with a great deal of sadness, of officiating at the community vigil in support of our residents and community leaders in relation to Turkey and Syria, alongside the CEO and a number of other staff. And I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have, Administrator Duncan. I'll now ask the CEO to provide an update to Council and to the community in relation to key activities.
Thank you, Chair. Council has stepped up its surveillance of litter hotspots recently and has been actively investigating incidents of illegal dumping and issuing on-the-spot fines. In the last 6 months alone, Council's litter enforcement team have issued over 60 fines to people illegally dumping rubbish on curbsides, vacant blocks and back streets. Unfortunately, we're still seeing people trying to get away with this sort of behaviour, but our message to them is that they will be caught, and we are encouraging residents who see littering to please report it. Dumping rubbish not only creates an eyesore for residents and costs council and ratepayers thousands of dollars a year, but can also cause significant damage to the environment. Residents can report dump rubbish via our website or by calling our customer services staff. The redevelopment of the Whittlesea skate park and BMX track here in Whittlesea has been completed. The park was redesigned following extensive consultation with local skaters and riders, and excuse me, and key features include an open bowl, quarter pipes, asphalt pump and street-style section. The upgrades are designed to cater for users of beginner, intermediate and advanced skill levels, and the upgrade also provides amenities such as social spaces, spectator areas, seating and drinking fountains to make the park more comfortable. Council contributed $600,000 to the redevelopment, and the Victorian Government provided $375,000 via its Growing Suburbs Funds grant program. 8 projects under this financial year's Missing Links program, its $250,000 program, have been completed so far. Footpath improvements have been carried out in Ridge Road in Whittlesea, Kerridwen Street, Epping, Loughton Avenue in Epping, Crabapple Road in South Morang, Wedge Street, Epping, Brookwood Avenue, Doreen, Colling Grove Crescent, Doreen, and also the shared path at Cooper Street in Epping. Just a reminder that our community festival is back on the 19th of March at the Civic Centre precinct from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's live performances, free activities, art installations, music, market stalls, cultural activities and much more. This time round we'll include our Pet Expo and a Sustainability Expo as well. We'll also be presenting our City of Whittlesea Community Awards on that day, recognising those who have gone above and beyond to help make the community better. And finally, Laylaw residents visiting the Summer Series World Kitchen event on Saturday the 25th of February are invited to reconnect and celebrate the latest offering in Council's Love Where We Live campaign. So the campaign debuted in Wollert last year, where residents were invited to help keep their neighbourhoods clear of dump rubbish, as well as learn about all the services that were available to them. Now, the next chapter in the campaign will kick off at the Summer Series event to be held in the centre of Laylaw. That runs from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. on Saturday the 25th of February. Residents will be invited to enjoy music, activities for the family, food and fun, close to the Laylaw shops, the nearby library and neighbourhood house and the Senior Citizens Centre. Love Where We Live will also be coming to other events in Epping, Thomastown and Laylaw areas over the next few months, culminating in the Walking Thomastown event on the 5th of May. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. Administrator Duncan, any questions?
Just one question about the dumped rubbish. How many of those, or have there been instances where, because of the nature of the rubbish that's been dumped, we've had to contact the EPA?
Quite a lot of those, Administrator. So we're averaging on, in an average month, 250 to 300 separate instances of dumped rubbish. And quite a few of those which are commercial or building material end up getting reported to the EPA. And we work in partnership with them to deal with that.
That was about my next question.
Dumping.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Craig. And I do note that all of these verbal reports will be documented in the minutes. As there's no confidential business, that brings us to the end of the council meeting. And therefore I declare the meeting closed at 9:12 p.m. Thank you all.